Tanya, I'm curious, at what ages should solid foods be introduced and how?
I think typically what we would say as probably pediatricians and moms and dietitians is that the first solid food when it comes somewhere between this time period of 4 to 6 months, but you'll find that their children are very different, or babies, infants are very different with regard to how accepting they are of solid food. But within this window of 4 to 6 months, and I think most would say that the first solid food should be rice cereal. It's least likely to trigger any kind of intolerance, and if it's the proper kind, infant rice cereal, then it's got added iron, because iron is probably going to be the one limiting nutrient, since breast milk isn't very high in it, even though it's better absorbed form of iron, and certainly formula and later cow's milk. So iron tends to be a little bit of an issue. And after the introduction of the rice, which should never be in the bottle, should always be by a spoon, then you can look to other grains. And I think that the key thing is to, and they should probably be infant cereal because again there'll be that added iron, is to space the introduction of anything new, maybe a couple, 3 days, 2 or 3 days. And that spacing means that you'll be able to identify any kind of potential intolerance or food allergy, and you'll know what caused it. And then after that, I think fruits and vegetables, there's a lot of controversy. What do you do first? And I don't think that's ever been answered. You could make a case either way. Again, as long as it's done singly. Introduce one thing that's new at a time and space it.
And how far do you space them out?
I think 2 to 3 days is when you should see some type of reaction.
Yeah, we usually say, they used to say a week. That's a long time. I usually say give it a few days.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Offering foods have changed. The American Academy this year, or actually I think it was last year, changed how we introduce foods, especially for breastfed babies, because breast milk is low in iron, vitamin D. We are encouraging that iron-rich foods be started. Well, besides cereal, what is an iron-rich food? Meats. So actually we're saying you don't have to start with fruits and vegetables anymore. Really anything goes. We don't have the old philosophy, you can't give the egg, right, before a year. Right. That's not true. Scrambled egg is a great finger food. So after 6 months, we do usually start with rice cereal on a spoon, but after that, a child can be offered any food. Not choking foods, of course, but any food.
And texture is really quite varied now, where we used to have, in fact, I think the baby food manufacturers still want you to go through that whole progression, but some children are just developmentally ready. And so as long as they're not choking on the texture, and gagging, I want to just say that gagging is normal, and you'll see a child just gag a little bit and then go right on and put more food in their mouth. That's perfectly normal. That's just figuring out how to swallow differently than what you do for liquids. So texture it can be, usually you think about going from something that's a little bit smoother like rice to having a little bit lumpy to having it a little bit chunky. So, and then also the finger food's very important developmentally, so that they develop that hand-eye coordination, and children just naturally want to progress. They want to eat, again, what you eat as parents.
Penny, when should a parent consider switching to a lower fat milk and why?
Children should have whole milk until the age of 2. After the age of 2, parents should feel comfortable switching to a low-fat milk.
And that makes perfect sense, because as children develop and grow and eat a wider variety of food, they're getting the fat that they need, that they had been getting from the maybe larger volume of milk that they were drinking. Now they're eating just more food and they're drinking less milk. So it becomes less important as a child gets older and is able to eat a variety of foods that provides that fat that they need, that's so important for their neurological development.
I think that's what Kevin wanted to know, is you need the whole milk to provide the fat for development of the brain. And you need that up until the age of 2 when you're having other foods that are higher in fats.
We could throw in words like bicost because that's a word that kind of goes back to
that's
the
old.
ages.
We're dating ourselves.
But what it says is that is the thing other than fluid nutrition. When children start to eat bicost, which is anything else other than the formula or breast milk, those things that provided all or at least a very significant part of the nutritional intake of the baby and the young child. And now they're eating all these other things that starts to take over. And that becomes less and less and less important to the point of age 2 when they may only be drinking 2 or 3 ounces of milk at a time, maybe sometimes not even drinking it. Here again, the parent's going to put that cup of milk at the child's place and then they will drink it or not drink it. And sometimes they'll drink more and want more, but it becomes less significant as a part of their total intake.
But they also may want to keep their eye on them because some kids do start to not want milk, and yet the key nutrients, and you're thinking about oral health and bone development. So I think it would be smart for parents to keep their eye on it, and if you see that they're falling behind in the recommended amount of milk intake, maybe then substituting, making sure that there's plenty of yogurt in the diet, low-fat cheeses, other sources of those key nutrients, calcium and vitamin D.
And drinking milk themselves.
Yes,
Modeling
role model.
behavior.
Tanya, would you care to weigh in on appropriate fruit juice consumption for children?
Well, that's actually had an interesting evolution. I know dietitians have a specific view of juices, even if they're 100% fruit juice. And I know the American Academy of Pediatrics actually came out with a guideline on fruit juices. I think the concern is, even though, again, it could be 100% fruit juice, the problem is there's quite a few calories in that fruit juice and the potential for decay, tooth decay is there. And it also, something ties in with what Peggy has said before, it kind of pushes other things out. They won't be eating, for example, maybe fruits and vegetables or other foods that they should be eating if they always have these juices in between, because essentially it's a caloric beverage that the body recognizes, gee, I've eaten something, so I may cut back on my food intake. So there are some concerns about juices, and some people even put them in bottles, and really sippy cups are a little bit of a problem as well, because that's something that the child is carrying around for a long period of time sometimes, and just bathing their teeth in this essentially sugar water to an extent.
So juice is bad?
Not bad, but I would certainly, within certain constraints, there should be limits on how much juice is offered. It should always probably be 100% actual fruit juice, not with a lot of sugar added. And by the way, you'd have to read the label because sugar can take on a lot of different names. And also that it should always be from a cup, not from a bottle. I've heard of moms putting fruit juices into bottles and letting babies walk around, little toddlers, with a bottle full of fruit juice. And they already have their teeth, so that's a potential problem.
I think the other factor is that we as humans have an innate desire, or we're born with the like of sweet taste. And so, if you start to associate sweet taste with what I get from the cup, and then you're less likely to drink water. I think milk and water can be the main beverages for any human. And you can sort of kind of skip that juice thing because we do want children to just drink, if they're thirsty, drink water in between meals and snacks, not juice, not milk. And that just becomes sort of a battling point that, as a parent, you don't have to take that on. You just don't buy the juices, and so then they're not there. Can't serve them, they can't ask for them, they're just not there.